Hi, Mr. Mustache Cutie. I'm the one with the trouble. I'm a pretty lucky girl to have a strapping fellow like you take on my trouble. Well, let me get right to it, okay? I've seen you deny your fans my reprise in the past. I moved to make an appeal to you. I'm certain that given the right tools, I'll be among the best there ever was. Once you meet with Goombella again, I'll be there to... well, let's just say... I'll substitute as your first and remain your only partner. Ready, sweetie? Because it's... showtime! Miss Mowz, the badge-boosting bandit of the rowdy ruffian refuge of Rogueport, is the worst partner to be found in any Paper Mario game that deserves to exist. My little purloiner, however, has attracted the admiration of my audience, and so she's seeing her reprise happen now. As that would imply, this isn't our kleptomaniac's first go-round. But she was bad. Really freaking bad. So yeah, thanks for voting it, jokers! Using practice codes created and compiled by Zephyrus, we're able to see Mowz by our side in the beginning as opposed to Chapter 5, or even Chapter 2 if you're cool. But without any further stalling, it's showtime! The first thing I tried to do was see what badges were for sale in the badge shop. Apparently Mowz wasn't ready to open up though, so we sadly had no choice but to get into some fights. Let's not mince words though, she's a bad fighter with strings that lie in deception. For example, you may think Love Slap is a decent attack. That power may be low, but it pierces defense, and for 0 FP to boot, how could that possibly be bad? Well, early game it's actually pretty okay, but it pales in comparison to Kiss Thief. For 2 FP, Miss Mowz can steal an item or badge from the frontmost grounded target. You can expect lots of items to be stolen throughout this challenge, as Mowz will need them to make progress throughout the adventure. For example, because Love Slap can't target airborne foes, she can't reach the Paragoomba, so your only options involve either skipping the Goomba battle entirely using glitches, or stealing a Fire Flower from a Goomba. Perhaps you've noticed, I didn't mention Super Guards as an option. Yeah, that's not allowed here. I know how y'all hate seeing them. Don't expect me to use them here in any meaningful way. Back to Kiss Thief helping us here. You can win this either through stealing a Fire Flower you see being held, or just randomly when you otherwise receive a single coin. Of course, the Goomba has to be grounded to be stolen from. Thanks, you dork! When you finally do manage to steal one though, provided it isn't used before you can actually reach the enemy, you can make like Kirby and send it right back at them. That's 20 minutes I won't soon forget. This is actually preferable to do multiple times, using different Goombas as guinea pigs, as Fire Flowers allow Miss Mowz to beat Blooper reasonably quickly. After 2 are used with some Love Slaps mixed in, you're home free and can progress to properly begin Chapter 1, where you can put Love Slap's piercing property to good use in eliminating the ball clefs. Bristles aren't as manageable however without POW blocks, and we just so happen to receive a pair for free. Using one here is a decent choice, much like how Fire Flowers will serve as well heading into Shuang Fortress, as Fuzzies all perish to a single one. When ambushed by Gold Fuzzy however, we'd be wise to tenderize the pest first through Love Slap. After 2 uses of that move, a couple of Fire Flowers will clear this area out, allowing us to come out with the Sun and Moon zones we scavenged. You can likely predict much of what we'll do in Hooktail Castle following Koops coming along. A pair of Fire Flowers reduces red bones to ash, and we meet Miss Mowz. However, did you ever notice how Miss Mowz and Miss Mowz are never together at the same time? Well, the reason for that is that the universe can't handle the paradox of knowing that Miss Mowz can literally exist in 2 places at once. Call it magic, witchcraft, 2 parallel universes running into each other in a cosmic timeline continuum pile up, maybe even a government conspiracy of cloning genetically superior mammals, which Area 51 is considered for public viewing, leaving us to speculate on what's behind those walls until one brave soul summons the courage and the root to run past the security system. The world may never know. Once we collect our 3 Shine Sprites from here, we should return to Rogueport to rank up Miss Mowz to Super Rank. Boosting her Love Slap power from 2 to 3 and learning Tease, the worst partner skill in the entire game. This can make enemies dizzy for a number of turns, and save for extremely specific scenarios where you literally have no other choice. you would be wise to never earnestly use this move. I also picked up the Ultra Hammer, seeing that it's going to be needed come Chapter 3. If you don't know, it allows us to skip needing Yoshi for the Armored Harriers midway through the Glitz Pit. I'll explain when it's relevant. Now, to take Hooktail out at first sounds like a simple endeavor. We simply use Love Slap on Modest 4 times, while mixing in Horsetail to sustain Mario and making sure to only guard Hooktail Stomp. With both Last Stand P and Mega Rush P equipped, we can begin laying into Hooktail with Love Slaps that do 40% of our maximum HP. We then proceed to consume a Mushroom and some Horsetails with Mowz come Phase 2, where her Love Slap will proceed to waste Hooktail and win the first Crystal Star. Huh, that was a simple endeavor. Helped that Hooktail ignored Mario for the most part. Prior to Chapter 2 though, I want to hunt for Fire Flowers. The reasoning is twofold. One, they're great against the Shadow Sirens when we encountered them in Boggly Woods. And two, you can't hunt for them once you accept helping Flurry out, whether we had the choice or not. And right as rain, 4 Fire Flowers finish them off. I feel like a gardener sometimes with how much I rely on plants. Wait, do mice eat plants? I know they eat stuff like peanut butter, and peanuts technically are the seeds of a plant, so I guess by that logic, Mowz is an omnivore, not a herbivore. Sometimes I wonder why Mowz never helps us break the punies out of the cage early. She's a master thief. You'd think she would just jimmy the lock open and save us a ton of trouble later on. She offers to do it in Chapter 6, I don't know why we never get her help to do it here. Especially when she's more than a match for any X-Dots we encounter here. Don't expect much from Magnus Von Grapple by the way. With Damage Dodge P and Mega Rush P equipped, this fight will not last long. It takes 4 Love Slaps before we see the X-Fist deployed. Assuming our guards are perfect up to then and we guard one of the X-Fists, we can keep attacking until our HP falls to 2. We plant our Fire Flower, overheat the fist, guard the Quake, and proceed to slap Magnus out. I did almost lose my first attempt, somehow, since I got my badges confused, but even when I choke, Magnus gives me so much room to breathe, I feel like a fish in the water. And the only reason I say first is because I wanted to actually execute my strategy instead of just mentioning that I had one here. It's a pride thing. 2 chapters down and beyond the hunting for items, this run hasn't been so bad so far. But that's about to change. And quickly. Surprise, surprise, Chapter 3 is going to prove to be an issue for Miss Mowz. A partner who not only can't target airborne foes, but can't even slap Spinies, because apparently their faces are spiky. Fortunately, we're just going to skip past this chapter. Seems pretty on brand for Mowz to actually just steal the belt. This is necessary because the Armored Harriers are impossible to defeat for literally everyone except for Yoshi, making this challenge essentially impossible. Signing the contract and attempting to clear Chapter 3 normally won't work, so I have to skip all the fighting here instead. It's really that simple. For this heist to be successful, we're going to deny signing Grubba's contract, and instead spin jump onto his bookcase and use our Ultra Hammer to bow through the vent. The badge Charge P is also available here. I may or may not use it, likely won't. Anywho, Macho Grubba, I'm using Charge P. This fight for Mowz involves way too much luck to just brawl with him. Attack up or dodgy statuses tend to end poorly for us, but defense is essentially a wasted action for him since we pierce with our only attack. Nonetheless, I decided to not bother with that at all. Was curious if it was possible to steal some slow shrooms, but the only enemies capable of dropping them at this point in the game are Piters. But they can't be held as items, so Mowz can't hunt for them. This limits us to only the one we can find in Rogue Pursuers, at least until Chapter 4. Guess it'll have to do. Though I don't like my odds with such a low level, so I make sure to get some Mystic Eggs from Petunies, seeing that they're the most potent farmable item we have access to at the moment. I feel bad enough for the fact that Grubba sounds so similar to Grubber. And if you've seen the 2017 My Little Pony film, you'll know why I may just be a tad bit peeved hearing anyone with a name even phonetically similar to the stupid little shrimp. Still, this fight was surprisingly challenging. I actually died on my first attempt because I forgot that Grubba's attack power is 4 and not 3. So despite Last Stand P being active for Mowz and thinking she'd heal enough from the slow shroom, Grubba did just enough damage to make the city in the sky her final resting place. Unfortunately, heaven would be too appropriate for the one not yet named the Angel of Death. So we try again to try and send Grubba to hell where he belongs firsthand. I feel like I forgot how to do basic addition though, because I somehow thought charge giving me a boost of +2 per 1 FP of 10 would give me +40 attack by the end and not +20. On the bright side, the way this fight panned out seemed to justify both farming eggs and using my slow stream here. Good thing too, because we're trapped in Glitzville once we do discover the truth behind Grubba and the Crystal Star after we save. Mario ended up being a great use for the slow shroom, and Mowz meanwhile was able to comfortably survive Monster Grubba's damage through the eggs. No doubt helped though that he opted to buff his defense frequently, which Mowz doesn't need to care about. Chapter 3 is behind us now, but I'm curious. And curiosity killing the cat works out well for mice, so engage me for a spell. With a number of about 6 fire flowers in my pocket, I want to try and reach the Armored Harriers despite knowing I won't be able to beat them. Despite Grubba being outed for his ring-sucking conspiracy, he still appears for the Goomba Bros to host a fight. Moreover, it turns out that as soon as we beat the KP Koopas, a Yoshi egg begins to follow us. Interesting. Also, the game still plays out cutscenes as if we're going through the glitch pit normally, but the dialogue from every fighter in the minor league is set to as if you already cleared Chapter 3, and the character is reset to act as such. Case in point, Bandy Andy walks out of the room after being scolded by Jolene, just to end up back inside when we reload the room. And he never walks back out until it's time for his match with us. Sounds like Jolene isn't right where she wants him. We even have King K retire, just to come back in the room after he leaves, during our following fight to say he unretired. What a drama king. I can relate to being afraid to commit to anything though. And then Master Crash and Clefthor talk about him as if he can't hear them being in the same room. And then Sir Swoop shows up to, I guess, get eaten by the Goomba Bros because we literally never see him again, and the Wings of Night don't even show up in the terminal. Talking about the fights themselves though, I actually ended up using a ton of items en route to the Armored Harriers, since Mowz has issues both with airborne and front spiky targets. But once we made it to the Armored Harriers and lots of them, the egg hatched. And we had Yoshi as a partner. So you mean to tell me that we don't need to use glitches at all to reach Twilight Town, and I've just been making it harder on myself for no good reason. I wish I remembered Malio's task speedruns earlier. Chapter 4 you'd think would be mundane, since Quinn is not a difficult fight to do at all. We're not really given much incentive to brawl with Atomic Boo either, since Mowz can't reach them, but it's easy to find the items to properly deal with the Colossus Beast as is. We have the choice to use Thunderbolts and HP Drains, and using 8 of either or a mix of the two will see us win. It helps that because we needed the Ultra Hammer to skip the Armored Harriers in the previous chapter, Double Dip P is also accessible, allowing us to dish out twice as many items per turn. This is a fantastic buff to Mowz's offense, and we're able to win in only 4 turns as opposed to what would be 8. And good thing too, because Mowz without Double Dip P, while she may not lose, Mario very well can unless you decide to hunt for slow streams ahead of time. While farming for items for Atomic Boo, I also came across an extra pretty lucky P. The implications of what I can do given badges can be stolen from enemies, I'll leave to you. Let's just say for now though that Miss Mowz can quickly become the Mighty Bee if she wanted to. Stealing items from the Hyper Goombas here also reaps some great rewards like boost cheats and life shrooms. If you've seen previous partners and how they deal with Chapter 8, this will be fairly obvious why having access to infinite of these would be a godsend should we need them. Last Stand badges can also be acquired here, though the odds are lower. Despite that, I got copies for both Mario and Mowz, so make of that what you will. It's not really wise though to let fights last long against enemies that can charge. Now as for good old Quinn here, you just need to slap him until he tries to steal Mario's shadow where you can then finish him off. He's just not a ghost worth being scared of, which says a lot actually considering what I actually am afraid of. Despite that, I actually did lose to him. Silly me forgot to check my badges before starting this fight, and I lacked the defense to actually survive. And since I'm a self-contained spite pouch, I decided to reset only after superguarding his hammer repeatedly because I hate losing to him. The second attempt went as expected meanwhile. Now, Quinn may have temporarily robbed us of our Mowz, but unlike Vivian who ditched me for her sisters and only came crawling back after suffering abuse, Mowz has always been around to embrace me every chance she gets, whether times were good or bad. Like I said, top tier girl. Oh yeah, make sure you have a Volt Shroom on hand. You're given access to one unboggly wood, so hold on to it. Anyways, Mowz can't even strike duplets as partners without items, and even if she wanted to attack them, She has no reason to, as Goombella is harmless if you guard her attacks, seeing that she's still at base rank. Dupless himself is just kinda slow. Doesn't help that partner badges don't work here, but with some occasional healing thanks to items, we'll come out okay. Before Dupless falls, feed a Volt Shroom to Mario, and then switch out to Vivian so that you'll have a chance of Dupless dying to recoil with Mowz out of the fight. Then you can proceed with the game with no further complications due to cutscenes. After this point, you're actually able to have Mowz as a partner once Chapter 4 is completed, no cheats required. Shame I wasn't actually able to do that for this challenge though. I have to use old footage from my original Mowz only video because trying to turn off my cheats wouldn't work, and Vivian would not be able to be switched in if her HP is forced to be 0. And I can't end the fight with Miss Mowz, as the game will crash, forcing me to then try again. Like, who do you think you are, my wife? Vivian, you silly bimbo. I'm not gonna lose sleep over this though, it being possible has been plenty proven before already. I don't really mind letting Mario go ape just this once. It'll be a fun warm up for when I eventually do a Mario alone challenge. Well, a second one anyway. Good to have you speaking at long last beyond treasure hunting, Mowz. Because now you get to howl in despair as we're stranded on Keel Hall Key. So before coming here, I recommend finding some ice storms. You can find them with Hyper Goombas, but they're honestly easier to find if you instead return to Glitzville and steal from bandits until they give some up. This proved obnoxious, as I've ended up finding pretty much everything but ice storms before finally finding one, including Sleepy Sheep, a Super Shroom, and even both copies of Pretty Lucky. But we did still find one after a whole 30 minutes. Jolene, I am so sorry. Yeah, there are tons of embers Mowz is up against. Good thing we don't need Love Sap to fight this brawl because she can do nothing but get burned otherwise. There's then the passage of plundering the Pirate's Grotto, where we then encounter Cortez. Despite the bone pile looking spiky all over, Mowz can slap it just fine. With 3 different phases each having 20 max HP, I opt to fight them all differently. After slapping the first phase about 5 times, I use Charge about 7 times and zap him to the extreme to end phase 1. The charge comes into effect for phase 2. This is because attacking the bone pile will prompt Cortez to charge, and his attack sees an attack power of 8. I am just gonna sidestep this by knocking him out in 2 hits. It's worth mentioning that like Dupless, I underestimated how important defense would be on my first attempt. And here's about the most telling sign of why aiming to make phase 2 end as soon as possible would be so important. Because with both Mario and Mowz take so much damage leading up to then, it's going to be thoroughly easy to submerge them in bones. I'm forced to use either Charged P or items. There's really no in between for Mowz as long as super cards are off the table. And I feel like it makes clear just how insufficient Love Sap is as an attacking option when coupled by Mowz's lack of other exclusive options. Goombella, Yoshi, and Bobbery can just blitz through this fight. Flurry and Vivian don't have to target the bone pile at all. And even Koops at least has Shell Shield to take some hits from Mario, despite having arguably worse weaknesses here as far as damage dealt. Phase 3 sees him catch on to our inability to strike him when he's in the air. Actually, I thought maybe I'd rely on an Ice Storm here, but it may be better to instead just rely on classic Fire Flowers. Using 3 before then resorting to Double Dip P. Shooting Star, Thunder Rage, Game, Set, Match. This sequence of items allows us to reduce Cortez's HP to 11, where we're able to defeat him. Any lower and he'd eat the audience's souls, and that's no good. Who else will subscribe to my YouTube channel if the few viewers I managed to convince I'm worth watching fell victim to the Big Bad Pirate King? So yeah, I saved your lives. You can thank me later. That much wasn't so bad. But then there's Lord Crump, who seems to have really wisened up and has a barricade of X-Dots blocking Mowz's path. Unfortunately for him, we've had access to Thunderbolts and HP drain since Chapter 1. So we can drop a bunch of these on Lord Crump until his X-Dots leave his defense. And once Phase 2 starts up, we'll just be a few more items from victory. Unfortunately for us, I forgot to actually bring some Thunderbolts and HP drains before being stranded on Keel Hall Key. And I was extremely low on good attack items with only a few Earthquakes and a Fire Flower to my name. Whoops. Well, at least the fuzzies here can hold Ice Storms. Took a lot of running away though, as I wasn't content with just constantly losing HP to damage I couldn't eliminate. And I need to heal at the end afterwards too. Of course, the lower damage they deal means I actually have to think now about how this fight will have to go. My first attempt, yes, I did die to him, saw me give Crump too much respect. I figured he'd just keep summoning more X-Knots where they can't hurt me, but I can't hurt Crump in any meaningful way. and I resorted to using primarily items until phase 2 where I can brawl him since the X's won't be blocking the way. Unfortunately, not trying to just leave it up to luck now meant I need luck on my side later, and Lady Luck was frowning up a storm. I couldn't freeze Crump at all of my ice storms, and unlike phase 1, Crump will always summon a stampede of X-Nauts to his aid whenever they're defeated at the end of his turn. So I got to a point where I couldn't do anything to Crump because Mowz can only target foes directly in front of her, and not behind other enemies. My level is also just dangerously low, but it hardly matters as being unable to win was a lot worse than having to try not to lose. In reality, it means I can trigger a game over faster if need be. Second try saw me just go and wipe the first wave of X-Nauts out, and then slap Crump until he needed to see a medic. Then it went all in with Ice Storms and Earthquakes to win the day. Well, that was unfortunately obnoxious. At least, now that we're back in Rogueport, we can rank Mowz up to Ultra Rank and unlock the power of
bestiality! This is not Sonic Next Gen!
I will probably never use this move either, if only because I can use all the items I want if I can hunt them down anyway. If I can't, well, it isn't like Mowz has good use for her FP against bosses outside of using Charge or Double Dip anyway. I may just use this move for the heck of it because farming items by trying to steal from enemies, it's not fun. Though it says a lot that I'm still enjoying doing this more than back when I used to play Pokemon for solo runs. Regarding Chapter 6, the Spania is normally found underneath Rogueport or gone, and now we can encounter Magic Koopas who can hold shooting stars. These are the strongest items Mowz has access to in regards to dealing lots of damage, and you'll want to bring a lot of them for Smorg. I barely have a strategy for this. What Mowz does here boils down to spamming shooting stars at such frequency, Star Haven will look like it had diarrhea. I don't feel bad though. Mario's the reason that wishes are granted at all anymore. We know our worth. Anyways, my other items involve an Earthquake, a Thunder Rage, and an HP Drain. Just because they're either available in the field so we save ourselves time grinding or help with our survival. And considering we won at least 7 shooting stars for Smorg, you can imagine this took quite a while. At least then we could take him out pretty easily. It seems a lot of this run is just stealing items to use against bosses. I guess at least now you can celebrate the fact that I'm not using Mega Rush P a lot. Man, I miss that badge. I'd say you never knew what you had until it's gone, but I knew what I had. And I loved it. I feel like this is also proving to be a good showcase for why I tend to ban buying items in my videos. They're severely understated as far as how strong they are, and when you mix in badges as well, it's no wonder why Mowz can be such a wild card. I will say though, the fact she can just get all the items she needs for free does a lot to mitigate how ridiculously hard this challenge would otherwise be for her. Though perhaps I'm speaking too soon. After all, Chapter 7 will lead us to fighting Magnus von Grapple 2. Actually, spamming shooting stars here with a few damage dodges would work perfectly fine. After all, that's what Vivian did, just with Fiery Jinx. And Mowz wouldn't even need FP to be able to replicate that tactic. However, Mowz isn't dependent on just offensive items like shooting stars. We can go the opposite direction and also rely on defensive items like boost sheets, which we've had access to for a while, but have had no reason to look at until now. But there's a more fun option we have too. Yeah, Mega Rush P. We can also just hunt for these badges from enemies like Hammer Bros. I would just repeatedly kiss these things to get copies of the badge, but that takes a really long time, and I learned from when trying that same tactic with the Glitzville Bandits. So instead, I resort to encountering, looking for if any are holding Mega Rush P, and stealing from there. What's great about this strategy is if you can find one Mega Rush P, you can double your winnings by stealing it, running away, and then letting yourself get first struck. For some reason, a second held item or badge will be up for grabs, allowing you to grind faster. This only works for enemies with a first strike that involves a projectile. So Hammer Bros with their hammer fit the bill perfectly well. Doing this, I'm able to pick up a total of 15 Mega Rush Ps. Though I really only wanted 14, there's no reason to not snag a freebie when it's there. And provided we reach Peril at that point, may my god help them. Yeah, fun fact. Partners with 0 max HP are considered to be in peril. Shooting stars also can be found from X-Naught PhDs, and it'll be nice to have them for the Palace of Shadow. May as well. It helps also that Miss Mowz has a fairly easy time reaching peril against Magnus too. We just give her no defensive badges and not guard a single strike from Magnus himself. Attacking once at the start will be all the extra damage we need. Then we can mostly just chill and wait. Mario at first looks like he'd be in some danger, but we actually can just smooch to get him his HP up to a safe value. Then, since Magnus 2 will always fire his X punches after dropping below 64 HP, you can Love Slap twice to wipe him out cold, both slaps doing 34 damage per strike. That's about all that needs to be said here. Chapter 8 will see us be back to relying on shooting stars for Dark Bones, where 3 and an HP drain will eliminate them all. Then it's Hop the Gloomtail. My badges here are pretty unusual. P if the down P is there, so Love Slap does a whole 5 damage to Gloomtail. But this time around, there's no defend plus P. Instead, we're just going to defend after our first attack. Really just click defend and wait. If breath is used, guard so you don't get poisoned. If the stomp is used, don't guard it. You can't guarantee you'll use either or his bite, but not guarding those two while guarding the breath every time guarantees you take 8 damage per strike. In this attempt, he just so happened to use his poison breath thrice in a row, which is the worst case scenario. Unfortunately for old Gloomy though, and all of Chapter 8, their fates were long since sealed. Why did I even bother hitting him before the final hit? He didn't have the HP anyway. But yeah, this is what Mowz can do with all 15 Mega Rush Ps I have. She's finally been reborn as the famed Angel of Death. And she is going to empty the Palace of Shadow if it's the last thing she does. Once we're finished here, Shadow Sirens are up next. And there's not much to really do here you haven't already seen. Shooting stars, double dip, you know the rest. I also stole an Ice Storm for here too. I was lucky enough to see it freeze Beldam and Marilyn, putting the former entirely out of the fight, and the latter up the creek without a paddle. The only attack she was able to get off was a single lightning bolt, which we can't guard anyway. And good thing she did get frozen because we could have very easily lost through no fault of our own if she was allowed to just zap us out of the game. Quinn did a fair bit of damage though to Miss Mowz, but I don't really have much of anything else to say about him. Tried to guard his Love Slap, and it still did full damage as opposed to when I didn't guard it at all. Tell me how that makes any sense. I found the one piercing move that ignores even guards on my end. What a revolting development. On to Grotus, this is where I had to get creative to not get destroyed. Even with all the items she could ever want, Mowz typically will struggle to find the chink in Grotus' defenses when he has all 4 Grotus X's. Nonetheless, I have the items necessary to make something happen. First things first, Mowz has no good reason to be at Ultra Rank at this point in the game, as longevity simply does not matter anymore. So I used Chet's Repo to reduce her rank from Ultra all the way back down to her base rank where she has only 15 max HP. This also means no smooch or tease for moves, and a reduction in power for her Love Slap, but she in actuality loses very little from being ranked down compared to other partners. Especially when Mega Rush P badges can easily make up the difference. Now for what I have in store for Grotus, we need some good old Sleepy Sheep. This item is actually fantastic here as opposed to its generally superior cousin to Stopwatch. After the first turn, which I spent basically to let Grotus was guaranteed 6+ damage where there's no danger of status buffs, I doubled up a Thunderbolt to wipe one Grotus X out, and then a Sleepy Sheep. What makes this item so useful here is that while it can put Grotus to sleep, it is also guaranteed to fail against his X's, and it lasts longer. This will give me more time to get hurt before he becomes invincible, which will happen once the status expires. I just need the X's to chip Mowz down to only 1 HP, which does not take long. Afterwards, she Love Slaps, which does an appropriate amount of damage given the name. We also just don't level up here, which is actually to our advantage as we're allowed to maintain peril going into Bowser and Cammy. Barring Cammy making herself invisible, this fight's already all wrapped up. All we need to do is double up a shooting star to drag Cammy down and boost Chi so Mowz can survive the first turn without burning a life shroom. On the following turn, we Love Slap Bowser so hard, he ends up falling for Mowz like all the other males who could only wish to be with such a queen. Sorry boys, she's my Phantom Thief. Cammy also gets stung so hard by Mowz's forceful palm, she appears yellow for a split second. Looking like Pikachu, what with such shocking smackdowns. But we've got one more fateful duel before us. Mowz, keep your head high and make her kneel before you. We're all counting on you. All that's left now is a quick scavenge through the Palace of Shadow to pick up some life shrooms, and then to find out I forgot to bring an extra boost sheet. But we have plenty of life shrooms at least, so we shouldn't be in too much trouble. Patches outfitted, the Shadow Queen is now ready to get creamed. The first 3 turns are easy to deal with, as her AI is fortunately super predictable. So we love Slap, and I proceed to point swap to land Mowz immediately into peril as the Shadow Queen's next attack. God damn it. I proceed to point swap after double dip to land Mowz immediately into peril, as the Shadow Queen's next action is to boost her attack and defense. A love shot from here initiates her invincible phase, where I'm doing whatever I can to minimize my livestream consumption. Unfortunately, the Shadow Queen retained her smartness from the Aubrey solo reprise, and so I lost about 2 live streams in addition to an ultimately worthless Repel Cape and an Ultra Shroom, which may or may not have mattered in the long run. But in the name of being optimistic, let's say it did. Either way, I know at least the shooting star mattered here. Finally, in Phase 3, I started to feel like maybe I should have equipped the last Mega Rush peak I had, since I actually had quite a bit of BP to spare and didn't really have any good use for it. I equipped stuff like Refund, Happy Flowers, Simplifier, just didn't really know what else to do with it all. I didn't even bother equipping any last sand badges for whatever reason. But I do think investing in 1 more Mega Rush P being equipped would have been smarter, because after 3 love slaps with no peril, I did only about 6 damage total. I actually could have very easily been out-healed had the Shadow Queen attempted to steal my HP, but she never did in this phase. And so after the Shine Sprite Bingo restores me to max HP, the Shadow Queen then drops me down to 1 after an unguarded Dark Pulse, meaning I can boost sheet here and proceed to cut through her health like a katana through watermelon. With 1 hit doing 72 damage, I can strike her a second time to do perfect damage, ending the fight and Mowz solo reprise absolutely spectacularly. Hope y'all are happy now. Can the worst partner be Paper Mario with the 1,000-year door all by herself? Well, technically no, as you need to use cheats to even start the run in the first place. But if you did need cheats just to start, yes, you most certainly can. It's not a particularly fun challenge though, what with Mowz's absolutely pitiful power, you pretty much are required to steal in order to make any meaningful progress. But outside of artificially limiting what she can do, the challenge becomes pretty pathetic. But I'm not interested in doing that, and I've already done a solo run with her where I resorted to Kiss Thief as an absolute last resort. You can check that out later if interested. Even though Mowz has decisively ascended from the bottom to the top of the leaderboard, I ask that you take this with a grain of salt. The option to launch Mowz's power into the stratosphere helped a ton for sure, but this isn't something most people will be able to do organically. I just went for a more extreme option here because it'd otherwise be way more tedious and honestly wouldn't even really be possible. Nonetheless, she is at the top now. Tied with Yoshi in fact. And so you know, my shop points are still only at 3. And they're 3 because of the forced items to collect in Zessie's contact lenses and the dry stream and Disney Dial Limit Don Pianta. I really did just steal all of those items to get further in the game. And this is my endgame time as a result. Compare that to Bobbery. Yeah, you can tell this challenge took me a really freaking long time given that. Ain't life cruel? But hey, it's past me's problem now. Until we meet again, Miss Mowz, I hope you can be proud of yourself for your kleptomaniacal course of conniving creatures. Next time we give someone a reprise, I think it'll be Mario. Until next time, I guess, tell me what you think of Miss Mowz. Do you think she's awful, underrated, how would you buff her? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and thank you to my channel members, especially MD Switchy for continuing to donate to me. I'm gonna take a long nap and I'll see you later.